Hello, everyone. Welcome to Achieving Success with Olivia Atkin. I'm your host, Olivia Atkin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We give you real life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Wayne Duvall. Wayne is an actor who has graced both television and movies. Wayne has been in movies such as The Kitchen, The Hunt, Greater, The Mulberry Tree, Home Run Showdown, and more. His television appearances include shows such as Pearson, Billions, The Blacklist, The Chicago Seven, Suits, Fargo, Madam Secretary, and the list goes on and on. So without further ado, hello, Wayne. It's fantastic having you on the show today.
Hello, Olivia. Thanks for having me.
To start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Wayne Duvall?
Well, success to me is pretty simple. It's doing what you love to do and able to make a living at it. Following your dream and knock on wood, your dream comes true. So that's pretty much what success looks like to me. Doing what you love, the money will follow, like that book title says.
I love that. And I feel like when you really figure out what you love, everything else falls into place. It's not just the money, but it's the drive to do it, the grit sometimes too, because you don't get worn down as much or as easily. You're willing to continue to go.
Yeah, the job is more or less the vacation. In the acting world, it's like the job is the auditioning.
Hmm.
The When you get the job, it's kind of being on vacation. You're doing what you love to do.
Yes, and I even see that too, like, this weekend, I was like, "Okay, we have these recordings and this and that," and I'm sitting there going, "Hey, can we just get to Monday so we could do this recording?" I'm
That's
like, "That's
right.
like in Disney World over the weekend, you right? The most magical place. I love Disney, but I was still like, I can't wait till Monday to go."
There you go. I know. You get to do what you love to do.
So that being said as well, I want to dive in how you figured out what your dream and pursuing acting was because you started out as an athlete growing up as a child and teen. So what was the point for you that you really realized you want to pursue acting and not just in your community, but then take that and have it become your profession as well?
Well, the basketball part kind of took me away from that original dream of being an actor because I have a cousin who's a pretty famous actor, a guy named Robert Duvall, and my when I found out that you could make a living doing make believe, I thought, well, my God, that's what I do now. All I do is play. I was like 6 or 7, and I saw him on an episode of an old TV show called Combat. And my dad said, "That's your cousin." And I was like, "What?" Because I never equated that. I just thought these people were in there making stories and they weren't real or whatever. And now I thought, wow, this is a job, and I want to do that. And so I wanted to do that until I started on the road to basketball, and that kind of just I kind of got waylaid from that and just started playing and having fun as a kid and doing sports and forgetting about it. And then when I realized basketball wasn't going to pan out, I started to think, well, you know what? Let's revisit that other thing that I liked when I was a kid. And then I found my true passion. It just went crazy, and went to college for it. And then you get that laser focus, kind of became like a calling.
And I think one thing you brought up in that, which I really want to highlight, is the fact that you took a moment in your time where you were like, okay, I have this passion for basketball, but it's not going to do long term what I wanted to do. I'm not going to get
Right.
at that space. And you went back to, I think, such a pivotal time in life where a lot of people forget to go back to sometimes is your childhood. What made you the happiest? What were things you got excited about? And you went back to that time and you said, acting. And I'm
Right.
going to do what it takes. And so many people I feel like when they get down or need to pivot, they forget about the moments when they're a child and really go back to, okay, before life happened, before we had all these obstacles in our way and we knew the power of the word no or self.
right.
defeating. What were those things that we were super optimistic and excited about?
I guess, I mean, for one thing, I came from I was the youngest of three boys by a long shot. And my older brothers both became lawyers and were very smart. And I didn't have that. I wasn't that smart kid. I played my whole life, basically. And I was playing sports and games and and I think a big turning point for me, not to get on the morose side, I guess, was when my father died. I was 13, and it happened like that, and he was gone. And for whatever reason, I remember thinking not just, oh, boo hoo, I lost my father. That was part of it, but also, wow, life is short because he was 45. And I said, life is short or could be. And I want to do what I love to do. For whatever reason, that was in there and said, do what you love to do. And that was kind of pivotal for me. When my dad died, I went, I'm going to do what I want to do. And I'm not going to stress myself out to make a living and pay the rent and I'm just going to trust that that all is going to happen. And I'm going to follow my heart. Excuse me. And that heart was, I want to try this acting thing. And it was not an easy path. I mean, it was just, but I knew it was what I wanted to do and what I had to do. Even when people said, yeah, really, you shouldn't do this. And I'm like, no, I need to do this. This is what I want to do. And
Mhm.
whether you're a success or not, I could try to make a living at it or not, do little survival jobs and do my acting thing. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it
But
does, and I think one thing you brought up there too is the obstacles that get in our own way sometimes, and not always taking the easy route to get from point A to point B. They really wanna focus on because especially in the acting community, as you just mentioned, it's not that easy, "Okay,
no,
here's the boxes, you could check
no,
them and you get there."
no, it's for me especially, it was very difficult. From the get go, I was pretty much like in college. I was told maybe you want to be on the side that builds sets and does the lighting, and I'm like, no, that's not what I want to do. And so when I moved to New York, I knew that I had to just work as much as I can. My famous cousin said three things to me. He said, "Go to New York, study with this teacher, Bill Esper, and don't study for 2 years and then just work in anything you can, whether you're paid or not, because that'll be your experience. And don't trust anybody in the business outside of your friends." That was the advice I got to go. And basically it was like I did that. I did summer stock. I did little church basement plays from unknown writers. And 13 years it took to get an agent for me. um, it was hard. I studied with the teacher he recommended, and that was the bedrock of my career. He was a great teacher, and you just got to learn to, especially in the acting business, to get a thick skin and be able to take the rejection and know that that's not personal. It's just part of the business. It's so subjective. They might not like you because your hair is the wrong color or whatever, and they can't think about we could dye it, but they. So you just gotta get a thick skin for rejection and just keep pushing forward and lean on your friends that are at the same level that you are, or maybe they're moving up in the world and they can give you advice. And there's also luck involved too. But follow your heart. You're only in this game once, so do what you love to do and don't sell yourself short. I used to worry about kicking myself
Mhm.
down the line if I'd be like, why did I give up? I didn't want to do that.
And that's something I definitely always say and emphasize in my life, or when people ask me, like, how did you get to this point? I said, because at the end of the day, I don't want to look back and say what could have happened.
Exactly.
I used that same thing when I was deciding what schools to go to. I had it narrowed down to one, and it was really my grandmother who put that idea in my head of like, think 10, 20 years down the line. Are you going to ever ask yourself? At the time, I was deciding between LaSalle University and Quinnipiac University. And she was like, if you go to LaSalle after going multiple times and seeing everything you could see, She goes, "Will you ever look back and say, what if I had gone there? What if I had not said no?" And do the same for Quinnipiac. And as soon as I asked myself that question, I was like, I would potentially question Quinnipiac. I'm not going to
Mhm.
question LaSalle. And that was like, for me, relating to what you're saying, that was really my point where I was like, okay, now I know my direction. And I've always used that starting this podcast. If I don't take down that road, will I ever look back and go, what could have that become? What community
Right.
could that become?
Exactly.
And for you, the other thing you brought up, which I love because it really is relatable to anything people go through and trying to get jobs, especially in today's society, is the rejection. And really having to understand that rejection isn't always personal, right? You could see
Mhm.
that with a boss and just having to give you your evaluation and it's not what you thought and you guys are friends. It doesn't always have to come down to that personal side. For you, how did you handle rejection, especially in the beginning verse as you start to get it and get used to it? And what are some tips you might have for people to build that thick skin up?
Well, one piece of advice, and I don't know whoever gave it to me, but it's or maybe I read it somewhere, but it's true, is failure is a gift. Okay. If you play it safe in life, you'll be disappointed when you look back and say, what did I oh great, I made a lot of money and I had nice things, but I really didn't do what I wanted to do, you know. And you can do that, I guess, if that's what you want. But if you really want to have a full life, embrace your failures, and I learned that early on. It's like I got to learn from this. What did I learn, what did I learn from this failure? Because that takes you on to the next thing. And even in acting, the other gift was all I can do is what I can do at my best. And what I mean by that is you can't be in the head of someone else, And so when I go into an audition, I do one thing, and that's try to please myself because I don't know what they want. And at the end of the day, if I do a really good job, I go, great. And what could happen from that is I might not get that job that I auditioned for, but the people on the other side of the table go, wow, he was really good. He's not right for this, but I want to remember him for that. And I can't tell you how often that happened to me, where someone said, oh, no, 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 we remembered you from so and so. And kept thinking, we got to keep a lookout for this guy, what we can put him in. So all you can do is your best and take the pressure off. Like, what do they want? What do I think they want? What is it? And those are the gifts that early on the rejection was like, I'm just going to go in and please myself. I don't know what they want. And then you find out later on as an actor, they don't know what they want. They're hoping that you're going to be it, and you're not going to be it if you're not yourself because nobody can do what you do because they haven't lived your life. They don't look like you, and so you bring something unique to every audition because even if the people outside the door look just like you, they can't do what you do because they haven't lived your life. And once I learned that, and how I learned that, I guess was trial and error and friends that would say, I'd be so nervous. I remember my very first guest star job, and I was so nervous about, oh my God, this is huge. Could be a big step for me. And, you put that pressure on yourself. And a friend of mine, I remember, who I was living with at the time, we were roommates, he said to me, what are you worried about? And I go, well, this is huge. He goes, you already don't have the job. What's the worst that can happen? They're not going to give it to you again. You don't have it right now. The worst that can happen is they'll give it to you. So take the pressure off. You don't have it. So
Mhm.
just go in and do your job and be the best you can be, and maybe you'll get it. And that took a lot of pressure off for me to say, I already don't have it, And then I heard Ed Harris once say, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get the job. So just go in and do what you do, and wish for the best and leave saying thanks for it. inviting me. And that just takes all the pressure off. And you do your thing and you stand out.
And I love that, and I think it's so true. So many of us, with different aspects of our lives at different points in our lives, sit there and go, "Oh my god, this opportunity, I can't let it go," and this and that, and then we end up getting in our own head because instead of focusing on the here and now and what do I have to do to knock this out of the park, you're getting 5 steps ahead of yourself, and
Yeah.
then yeah, and it's one of those things that can really end up hurting you more than helping you.
Yeah. You just got to take that off the plate. Just say, I have no control over this. So much of any career, I think you have only so much control. And that control is what you personally bring to the table. And that's your whole job is to find out what it is you bring to the table. What they're looking for, what they want, what their agenda is. I got no control over that.
Mhm.
There was I went to a church once and the great preacher said, what everyone thinks of me is none of my business, because you just go in and just do your business. And if they like you, great. If they don't, okay. All I can do is be who I am, you
Yeah,
know?
because the other part of that too is sometimes people are not gonna like you because there's other things personally
Yeah,
going on.
absolutely.
And you have no control on how others sometimes perceive you. You only have the ability to be true to yourself, be true to your values, your
Hmm.
character. And I think that's really important. The other thing you brought up, and you and I have talked about this previously, is the importance of thinking outside the box and building those relationships. You even mentioned that in what you were talking about earlier is you could go into an audition, you might not be the fit for that audition, but they might be thinking about you and being on the lookout for other roles down the line. You told me a story about a really interesting out of the box way you built relationships with individuals. What are some of the ways you've done that in the past? And why do you think building not just your network and your connections, but really making those relationships is so key?
Well, are you referencing the cookie story?
I
All
love the
right.
cookie story.
The
I mean,
cookie
I love
story is so
cookies
good.
in general,
Well,
so
who doesn't? Come on. That was an inspiration. But before I get to the cookie story, the first thing I always think is always always respect everyone who you encounter when you're wanting to pursue your career. Respect everyone on whatever level they're at. If they are a secretary, whatever, because they have their dreams too, and they want to move up in their world too. And sorry, these beeps keep going off. I
you're
hope you don't hear. All
no,
right, good.
you're good.
All right, good. And but what it is basically I've had situations where, a buddy of mine was a casting director who I knew from we just started partying together early on, and then he became this casting director, and his assistant was this lovely woman named Randy, and we just hit it off. And I remember thinking, this is great. She's gonna be a good friend. And that's all you think about is like making good relationships. Trust your friends. They're the people to trust. And sure enough, Randy's dream was not to be an assistant to a casting director, was to be a casting director. She went on to be an associate casting director for a bigger person in the business. And they were doing a movie. She recommended me for that movie. I came in, I got my first big part through my friend Randy. All right. So it's that kind of thing. You always respect people on whatever level they're at. Now, the cookie story was an inspiration because I had a friend who I'd known since college, whose whose name I guess I could to say his name, Jeffrey Kluger, who wrote the book with Jim Lovell that the movie Apollo 13 was based on. Well, I went to Jeffrey. This was like his first big deal. This book was going to become a movie. And I said, Jeff, can you get me an audition? He said, I really don't feel comfortable doing that. And oh, come on. And his brother was an actor and he wouldn't get his brother an audition either. But he was rightfully nervous. He thought, I don't want to burden these people. I want this thing to go well. So I was walking on the Third Street Promenade one day, and I was in the mall there in Santa Monica, and I looked up and I saw Mrs. Fields cookies. And I just got this idea. I said, "What is you?" And I didn't have a lot of money then, but I said, "What's your most expensive box of chocolate chip cookies?" Because everybody loves chocolate chip cookies. And they said it's a $34 box. Back in 1993, that was a lot of money for me. But I went, okay, and I bought this box. It had a little cellophane window in it. And it was back then that you still had the physical pictures and resumes you had to hand to people and little postcards with your picture on it. So I put my postcard pictures on the inside thing so that when they opened the box, they'd have to look at my face. And then I put a letter on the top basically saying why I was perfect for it, that I knew Jeffrey Kluger, that I wanted to audition for anybody and or anyone on any level. I didn't care. It could be the cleaning staff. And I went to the office of the casting director thinking I was going to get pushback. There was nobody there. So I was like, "Ah, screw it." So I just put the box on the receptionist's desk and walked out. And by the time I got home, and it was also back in the day where you had to call into an answering machine to get your messages. And I called in, and there was a message of a woman with her mouth full saying, "You have an appointment with an assistant on Monday for Apollo 13." Went in for the assistant. She liked what I did. She sent me to the main casting director, Jane Jenkins, who liked what I did, who sent me, and I had an audition with Ron Howard, who cast me as one of the Apollo 13, mission control guys. And I had a really good part in there. It was really nice. And apparently the story is Ron Howard asked Jane Jenkins, the casting director, "Where did you find this guy?" And she just, "Cookies, you know." And then after that, I told that story, and all my friends and everybody started sending them food, and they said, "Sorry, timing is everything." So, so I mean, and that just sort of came to me, and you just got to be open to that stuff. Going, whatever. I felt humiliated. I felt I've done everything I can to try to get in there. My agents couldn't get me in. My managers couldn't get me in. Mrs. Fields got me in. So it worked out. But if there's something you really like, go for it. That's my message. Go for it.
And it's one of those things too, and you just mentioned that timing is everything, right? If you start
Right.
following the path, then they're gonna be like, "Okay, this is not a new innovative thing." But when you do something small like that, and at the time, I'm not saying it was small to your wallet or anything, but it was
Right.
that small gesture of kindness while also going the extra mile that probably no one else was thinking to do, that
Yeah.
really showed what you were willing to do and why you were passionate to get that role.
Well, the other thing is too, it's like I was passionate to get that role. It was something I was passionate because I knew I was right for it. And basically you want to say, I did everything I could to get in this door, including bribing them with food because that's how much I wanted it. So when you find something that you go, I want this. What can I do to get in the door to at least give me the chance? If they were to say, "Sorry, you're not right for it," I could walk away going, "But I got in the door and I gave it my best shot." You know, it turned out to be a great shot for me, and it opened up some doors, and that's what happens you know?
Mhm. And what was it like? Obviously, you got that role on your own
Mhm,
merit, which was probably
mhm.
even more rewarding for you too,
Yes.
and that your own grit. But then what was it like working with individuals, like you said, your friend who'd written the book, if he played a part in that, creative process at all, being there and experiencing that when it was such a big moment for him as well.
Well, it's a cool story is that I walked when I got on set, he was there, as the writer, and he ended up getting a nice little part in the movie too when another actor didn't work out. But we were all on a break, and we were on Paramount Universal lot. Yeah, Universal lot, stage 27. And we were walking, he and I. I've known this guy since college. His brother was in my wedding. Um, and we were walking around, and I was looking at all the sets, and I said, "Look at this, Jeff." And he's like, yeah, I know. I said, no, look at this. You had an idea. You said, I want to contact Jim Lovell and write the story of Apollo 13. You had an idea. That's all it was. And this all came about from that idea, and he kind of he was taken aback and he went, I've never thought of it that way. I went, yeah, your idea put all this in motion. All these people are employed because you had an idea. Um, and that's the power of that. You have that power to say, what can I do to make something happen in my life that's really important to me? And think on that and let whatever comes, come. Um, but that was kind of cool. And then working with, Ron Howard, Ed Harris, and Gary Sinise. And then I've made lifelong friends with my fellow mission controllers who have done okay. Um, so it's been pretty cool.
And that just gave me chills what you said too, because sometimes we lose the fact that one idea can really
Mhm.
affect and end up creating not just a beautiful and important story, or in that example, or movie, but friendships, relationships, careers. There's so many things that one idea can really blossom into and affect so many people.
I got a movie based on one of my mission controllers who was in the panel behind me in that movie. I was at a stoplight and my buddy Todd Loizo, who was, I forget what his title was in the movie, but he went on to have a great film career, but he also went on to direct movies. And he was directing a movie with his college roommate, who wrote the script, Gordy Hoffman, whose brother was Philip Seymour Hoffman. And he was directing a movie called Love Liza. And I was at a stoplight. And Todd pulls up beside me. He signals me to roll down his window and he says, I'm doing a movie in Alabama with Philip Seymour Hoffman. You're perfect for it. I want you to do it. I went, okay. And then I got another movie and I got two scenes with Philip Seymour Hoffman, and you say, oh my God. So, and that came from Apollo 13, which came from Jeff Kluger's idea, so you never know. There are a lot of things like that. It all adds up. Let it
And
happen.
And I want to talk about that a little bit more because you, like I mentioned in the intro, you've worked on both movies and televisions, which typically is not always what you see, but I think is so interesting too. And some
And
of my,
Broadway. And
yeah,
Broadway.
and Broadway. I forgot to
Oh,
mention that. Yes, and Broadway. And some of my favorite movies and television shows you have been on. And when I was going through your list, I was like, this is impactful for so many different reasons. And I'm like, I love that show. I've watched this show 5 different times, the whole series. I've watched this movie, and also you've been on projects that are also tell part of history, tell part of people's lives, the impact they've had on the community, and shows and movies that are really used to teach about history. For you having to work on those different projects, and some of which you're sharing those history moments and trying to really embody an individual or what that environment was
mhm.
like. When you're on projects like that, or any project, how do you really embody the character and make sure that people could connect with that person you're playing and really feel a part of a movie, a show, Broadway environment?
Well, I think it comes down to that whole thing of, you know, you're unique. Who
Mhm.
you are as a person is unique. So when, let's say, like a movie that's a very teachable movie that's taught in schools all the time, Lincoln, and I played a real life character that no one really knew, but his name was Bluff Wade. He was a senator and he was a radical Republican, which is like AOC and the Democrats right now. The Republicans were a whole different party. But you do whatever you can do to find the man. You read books about him. You look up things that maybe, because he wasn't like, Abraham Lincoln where there's so much information, but there were books written about him. And so you read those to find out, okay, I can relate to that, or I can bring this to it. And he was a fiery guy, and he literally, when Union troops were retreating from Bull Run, the second Bull Run, he went out there with a gun and started firing over their heads, saying, "Get back in there and fight." He was a tough old bird, and I tried to bring that. And then I yelled, "Who do I know? My grandfather was a tough old bird." I mean, so you use what you know in your life um, to inform your characters. And it's like I just finished doing a play that hopefully will be on Broadway this year. It's a new musical called Swept Away, and I played a whaling captain in the 1880s who goes through a shipwreck, who's not achieved anything he wanted to achieve in his life. So he starts at ground zero and goes down from there. So it's very depressing, but you just mine your life and how you can relate that to somebody from the 1880s, and maybe find a role model from the 1880s or a picture. I have a picture of a guy. I go, oh, that looks like he would be my guy, and whatever works for you, but it's all coming through the filter of your life and who you are uniquely. So I guess you do something like the trial of the Chicago Seven, which was a real event, right? About the 1968 Democratic Convention and all the upheaval that happened there. And I played a cop who tracked down, one of the guys and was following them. And, Aaron Sorkin put him in the script. And I don't know if it was true or not that he lied on the stand, basically. But, you try to go, what's a Chicago cop look like in the 1968, and take that from your life and just live it. As my famous cousin says, just talk and listen, talk and listen. So you do your homework and then just let it all go and just talk and respond. So that's kind of how I approach it.
Another thing I want to bring up, and you've mentioned this throughout this episode, is it's that relationship building, but also being an actor, having so many different experiences, traveling for work. We've talked about that, of how like a role could populate at any given time and you could get called to do it. And then you have
Right.
to go and your availability changes. But you also have a family yourself and a amazing wife. And so for you, how throughout the years have you made sure no matter where you are that you guys could keep in touch? And because so many times, especially you see it more and more on the news now, you've couples in the celebrity community breaking up because distance,
Hmm.
this and that. And all those things also play a role in anyone's lives. Distance can hurt a relationship if you're not communicating correctly or in the ways
Right,
that
right,
there
right.
need.
Well, the thing that makes ours a little easier is that we don't have kids. We
Mm.
have a dog. And, we have our little dog, and that's it.
Well, a dog
Um,
can be a kid. I will say
Yeah,
it about my
it's true.
dogs.
Well, it's true. She's our little girl. She's our little girl. But just like this job I just did, my wife retired, so that helps too. But sometimes distance can be a good thing because I'm I'm home a lot, and then when she retired, she's home a lot. So I'm sure she's like, "Please go, take your job, go." But the first 2 years of our marriage, I lived in LA and she lived in New York. So that was hard. It was a lot of phone calls, a lot of talking all the time for hours, or trips when I'm not working. I come and stay with her. If I'm working in LA, I go back out. But you just have to. She was in the world of advertising and commercials, and um, she was an advertising exec, so she knows what that transient life can be. Because she'd have to go shoot a commercial in South Africa. I have to go to Prague and shoot a commercial or whatever. And so she knows what that life is like, and she knew when she signed up for it. Sometimes though it's hard because she'll plan a vacation, and 95% of the time you plan a vacation, if you're an actor, 2 weeks before, oops, I got a really great job. And so now we're used to getting that travel insurance that you add that rider on saying if I get a job, I get my money back. Allianz, great travel insurance. Um, but she that disappoints her, and she always says you got to give me 48 hours to be pissed off, and then I understand. But we had a trip to Barcelona that we had to completely reschedule at the last minute, because I got a job, and that's just the nature of my business. Sometimes I say, "Hey, you screwed up. You married an actor." It's what I do. So she's after 20, was it 22 years? I think she goes, "Okay, I get it. I'm all right." But it took 22 years, uh, you know. So she always gets refundable tickets now. So, but you make it work. It's just the nature of the beast, But on this last job, she came down and stayed with me for a month. She knows not to come down while I'm rehearsing because I'm a crazy person. Because I'm trying to figure stuff out. But once I'm in the job and we're doing it and we're up and running, she comes down. She brings the dog, and she lived in D.C. for a month. You
Mhm.
know, so it's nice for her too. She gets to see a different place.
And that was gonna be another question that when you started bringing up, these different locations and distance and all that was, what is it like for you in your process of not just filming and, like you said, rehearsing and coming up with these characters, but then you're in a new environment while you're
Mhm.
shooting? Are you also trying to, explore potentially a new place that you're in? What is that like for you?
Well, no, it's yeah, first and foremost, I'm there to work. So it depends on the difficulty of the part. If I'm like, playing something I've played a million times and I really only have to memorize the lines and go out, just talk and listen, then I can go out and see places and stuff. Or a play sometimes gives you the opportunity on your day off because you're rehearsing all the time to say, I just want to relax and go, to a museum or something. But a lot of times too, if you fly into a place for a guest star for a show, you're there for 8 days and you've got your work to do. So basically, all you can do is really go out to eat, maybe, um, unless for God, you get 2 or 3 days off and you go, I'm just going to take a day to decompress. But you're there to work, and so it's fun. You're in a hotel, you get room service, whatever, but you're there to work, and you want to turn in a good job, so that they'll bring you back for another episode, maybe. Who knows?
And for
So,
you, throughout your career, what has been some of the most rewarding moments, or those moments where you said, "Oh, I really learned something through this process that I didn't think I would walk away with?"
well, I guess one movie that I'm kind of known for is a movie called "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" that the Coen brothers did with George Clooney and Holly Hunter and John Turturro and all these big celebs. And I remember and I had a big part. And I remember I had my biggest scene was on my first day of shooting. So to say that, I wet myself is an understatement. I was a little nervous because every big star in the movie was in the scene, but it was my scene, and well, at least in my mind it was. But I remember my first day, I walked in with a coffee for that scene, and Holly Hunter's there, and she was dressed all in white. And I leaned down to talk to her just to say, what a joy it's going to be to work with you, or blah, 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 something. And George Clooney came through like a tornado, bumped into me, knocked my coffee, and it went all over her white dress or white, whatever she was wearing. And I think it was her regular stuff. We were there to rehearse first, and I was like mortified. And George walks in, oh, sorry, and I was like, I'm so sorry. But yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. So I was really nervous going into my first speech, and I just remember going, all right, well, you people hired me, and maybe that was your mistake because I'm just gonna go and do what I want to do now. I don't know what's gonna come out of my mouth. I just dumped coffee over the star. I'm just going to go and do my thing. And it worked out. I remember that. And that was a big moment for me to go, you just got to let go. You got to let go. I mean, once you've got the job and you're at the edge of the diving board, I got to dive. I got to do it. So that was a huge lesson for me. Other lessons were, don't if you're working with someone that's like an icon in your industry, whatever you choose to do, like on Lincoln, don't throw that opportunity away. I remember when I was on Lincoln, and I think I was there for like a month in Richmond, Virginia, and every time I wasn't working, I was on set in a gallery somewhere watching Steven Spielberg work with Janusz Kaminski, because this is the tip of the spear in terms of great filmmaking. And I was watching him. His passion for it was childlike. He would take the camera from this, I don't know how many times Academy Award winning DP, and just say, "Ooh, let me do this. I want to shoot this over here. I might not use it, but I love it. This shot, whatever." And he knew everything. He knew about the lighting. He knew about costumes. He knew how to handle his actors and be respectful to them. I mean, it was and I was sitting in this gallery, and I'd look over to my right. Sally Fields was sitting there. I look over to my left. There's Gloria Rubin. These were major leads in the movie doing the same exact thing I was. I am not letting this moment pass. And so it was, those are the things, don't pass up work. If you're working with someone that you could learn from, try to learn from as much as you can from them, you know. And they treated everyone respectfully on top of that. So, and the other thing is, have make friends wherever you go. Legitimately make friends, not to just move ahead. I did Leatherheads with George Clooney, and we all became friends. All the guys that were on the football team in Leatherheads, still dear friends. One of the dings that you might have heard in the background was Stephen Root, who I met on Leatherheads. You know, um, so that's where you'll meet your network of true friends in the business. Um, is when you're working and you find people that are of like mind and are good, decent people.
And that's something you've also mentioned in the beginning of us talking as well, is the power of having those good friends, not just in moments to grow, but really be able to lean on. So
Yeah.
what are some moments you've been that friend and ways you've been able to lean on others and others have been able to lean on you throughout the years?
Well, I have friends that, have, because we're older now. And some have decided to move on to teaching, and they've asked me, "Would you come in?" And there's no charge when a friend calls you. There's no, "Oh, I'm gonna make some money here." It's like, no, you call me in and let's do this. And you give back, I guess, is the other thing that's important, is like doing stuff like this.
Mhm.
You give back because you're paying me big bucks on this. And
Oh,
you
yes,
you
there's millions.
it's huge. And the residual stream, I can't wait. Um, but no, you give back when you can, because that's just the way it works in my world anyway. It's like, if a young actor is talking to you and you can give them advice that you wish you had had, it's that's invaluable to them. And you watch, and then the good thing is to be able to get to watch other people that you've talked to just blossom. You know, there's a kid, I've never even met him face to face, but this kid's dad called me for advice. His kid was going to go to Los Angeles or New York. He was going to go to Los Angeles, and he wanted to know if there were any good acting teachers out there I could recommend to his son. And he was my brother-in-law's in-law, one of those. And I said, "Yeah, you tell him to study with this guy Chris Fields out in LA. He's really good." Um, and he did. And then that kid went on to become the lead in the TV show Grimm, which went on for like 5 years. Uh, what's his name now? David Giantoli. And I've had friends. I said, "Oh, say hi to him." I don't know if he'd remember me, but he said, "Are you kidding me? I'm here because Wayne Duvall." And I've never met him face to face, but he said, "I'm here because he turned me on to my teacher." And, so that's rewarding. You hear stuff like that and you go, "Oh, I played a little part that helped him, do some cool things," and he remembers it. So, it's,
And I think
yeah, that stuff is rewarding.
And I think that's the power of really being in your own skin, but knowing what it takes to get there and not having any ulterior motives. You and I have really talked about this previously is the power of paying it forward and being
Yeah.
able to directly or indirectly leave that positive impact, make it a little smoother, and share those life lessons with the next generation or that next person coming up because you never know just by making it a little bit easier of a ride, that little smoother journey, how it can play.
Right. Well, I also the other thing is always be grateful, you know? And I say that and I was just thinking about my latest tattoo. I have 3. My latest tattoo is that right there.
Mhm,
And everyone's like, "What the hell is that?" And I said, "That is the international symbol for gratitude. It's Hawaiian derivative." And I always look at it because I'm so grateful that it worked out because it so easily couldn't have.
mhm.
But I followed my heart, I followed my dream, and I said, "This is what I'm gonna do." Whether I'm able to make a living at it or not, I could have been doing community theater, but I would have done community theater, and just acted because I loved it so much. And you just try to be as good as you can be. But the most important thing, I believe, is to walk in the light of gratitude. Just be grateful, that you are where you are, and know that you didn't do it alone. You
And I
know,
love that because no matter how hard we all work, it does not just take ourselves.
no.
There are others at play. So for you, you mentioned the teaching opportunities, doing this when you can. What are some of the things that the second you hear you want to dive in just to make that impact and it doesn't matter. It drives you every time you hear of like this is something I could do to pay it forward.
Well, I have there's a theater company that I was involved in back in the '80s called the Barrow Group. That the 2 founders of that company went on. It's still going, 36 years, and it's doing really well. And whenever they say, we're going to do a panel at the end of the year, would you be on that panel to talk to our students? Absolutely, and that excites me almost as much as being on stage. That's why I always toy with the idea of teaching, and being a teacher and going off and doing it. But then I still have this love of doing this that I don't want to kick myself and go, well, did I really run the course as an actor before I give it all up? Because teaching does excite me. But I try to do whenever I can and try to seek it out, what they call these panels or a master class or go to my alma mater. I just met when I was down in DC because I went to the University of Maryland. I went and met with the guy there, from alumni relations or whatever, and said, "Look, guys, I'll come down and talk to." I did it before, and they asked if I would do an audition class. I went, "Sure," and you give whatever advice you can from being in the working world, which I never had when I was at college. I never had someone from the working world come in and talk to us, and I think that's so important that people that are actually doing it
Mhm,
impart that wisdom to people that want to do it, as opposed to just academia that never did it, but just studied it and is trying to teach people. That kind of frustrates me. Like, I want to learn from someone that's actually doing it or has done it,
mhm.
to get their perspective of what they were doing when they were in the room auditioning or when they were doing Broadway or when, they made a movie with, you know, blah, blah. So it fires me up when I get to do that because it's exciting to see the eyes sparkle and go, "Thank you." I had a I had a kid once in a panel that said, "Well, I'm having a struggle with my parents, because I want to do this and I want to go off and do this, acting thing, whatever. But they want me to go to this community college or this college and get a degree in this before I go do that." And I said, "Sorry to your parents, but go do what you want to do. You're an adult, and I think you should follow your dream. You know what? And if it doesn't work out, you can go back to community college. But follow your heart and do what you want to do." And I'm sure those parents were like, "Screw that guy," you know. But I'm just telling you my truth. I mean, take it or leave it.
And that's
So
all we could do at the end of the day, share our
yeah,
truth, our journey.
right, right. I mean, I look at you and I applaud you because you've achieved success.
Thank you.
Olivia Atkin. You've achieved it. Look at that. Your name up on the board there and everything. You've achieved it. You're doing what you want to do, and you're good at what you do.
Thank you. And I appreciate all the kind words, and I appreciate all that you do because I think one of the best things we could all do in life is not just follow our passion and really pursue that. You've made an impact, I know, in telling being a part of so many stories and really able to share that joy, that emotion that really resonates with so many people through your characters. But you also pay it forward. And I think that's one of the best things and one of the most kindest things we can all do is really share our own experiences and tell our truth and tell our journey. So,
Mhm.
that being said, thank you, Wayne, for all of your insight
Oh,
today.
we're done.
Yeah.
Uh,
I know the time went by so fast,
I
right?
know it really did. I looked at the clock now and went, "Oh my god!" All right. I
Well,
talk a lot though, so
we did talk about that when we were talking. We said it's gonna go by fast with the 2 of us.
I think so. And you were right. You were right as usual, Olivia.
Well, thank you so much. And a few of our key takeaways from today's conversation are do what you love to do. I love how Wade said it's really about following your heart, finding your passion, and being able to dive into that, as well as failure is a gift. That was one of my favorites that you had mentioned today because it really does help us grow as an individual. Sometimes, for example, like you brought up earlier, is taking that rejection, getting that thicker skin, allowing us to pivot in ways that and open doors of opportunities that we might have not thought of before, as well as all I could do is all I can do is my best. And I think that is such an important message because it is sometimes letting go of all the stressors, the emotions that come with an opportunity and saying, okay, I'm here for a reason. I got to just do my best. And however it plays out, it's going to play out. But I laid it all on the table, as well as ask yourself, have I done everything I can to open the door for myself? Wayne had mentioned this earlier, and I think it's such a powerful message is did you actually do everything you can that's in your power to open that door? Give yourself that opportunity. If you get that interview, okay, well, you got it. Going back to our last key takeaway is like you did your best and you left it on the table. And that's all you can ask for. As long as you're doing everything within your power to give yourself that opportunity, then you're doing your best. As well as sometimes you just have to let go. And I love the part when Wayne mentioned the diving board because I forget if Wayne and I even talked about this, but I was a swimmer and a diver, and set state records diving. So that diving board can be daunting sometimes, but sometimes you just gotta let go and jump off that edge and walk in the light of gratitude. I think no matter what our passions are, our journey in life, wherever life takes us, walking in the light of gratitude is such an important message. And my favorite that Wayne had mentioned, because no matter the size, big or small, we can all walk in light of gratitude. This was a great episode with our top notch guest, Wayne Duvall. Thank you for listening and have a successful day.